Heavyweight fighters aren't supposed to move like this. They're not supposed to finish world-class opponents in under 2 minutes with the regularity of a metronome. They're not supposed to submit black belt grapplers, knock out elite strikers, and out-wrestle decorated wrestlers all in the first round. Yet, here stands Tom Aspinall, the English anomaly who's systematically dismantling every assumption about what a heavyweight champion should be. In a division where championship fights often go the full 5 rounds, Tom has transformed violence into a precise science that rarely requires a second chapter. His average UFC fight time sits at exactly 2 minutes and 2 seconds. While other heavyweights are still establishing rhythm, Tom is already walking back to his corner with another performance of the night bonus. But this isn't a story about overnight success. This is about a working-class kid from Greater Manchester who learned jiu-jitsu on his living room floor, watched his father gamble everything on a 12-year-old's potential, and spent years fighting in half-empty venues for gas money. This is the untold journey of how England finally found its heavyweight king. Atherton, Greater Manchester, early 2000s. 7-year-old Tom Aspinall sat cross-legged on the carpet, absorbing every word as his father Andy demonstrated jiu-jitsu techniques he'd just learned from a small gym across town. This wasn't privileged academy training with world-class instructors and state-of-the-art facilities. This was a working-class father sharing his passion with his son in whatever space they had. Andy Aspinall wasn't a former fighter chasing glory through his child. He was an IT contractor making good money, living a stable, middle-class existence. Martial arts was just his passion. But he saw something special in how quickly Tom absorbed concepts, the natural timing, the spatial awareness, the competitive fire that burned in his eyes. So Andy made a decision most parents would never consider. He would give Tom access to everything, not just jiu-jitsu, but the complete spectrum of martial arts. He mapped out a weekly schedule that sounds insane. Mondays for jiu-jitsu, Wednesdays for boxing, Fridays for wrestling. In a town where martial arts meant amateur boxing at best, the Aspinalls were building something entirely different. They were creating a complete mixed martial artist before the term meant anything in Britain, before the UFC had become mainstream, before most people understood what MMA even was. By age 12, Tom wasn't just training, he was winning everything. British Open championships in every belt class except black belt. Not just competing, but dominating with startling consistency. While other young grapplers focused purely on their ground game, Tom was boxing, wrestling, learning catch wrestling techniques that wouldn't become mainstream for another decade. The diversity of his training was creating something unique. A young teenager who could see the game from every angle, who understood how striking set up takedowns, how wrestling created submission opportunities, how everything connected into one seamless system. Then Andy Aspinall made a bet that would terrify most parents. Between ages 16 and 17, Tom Aspinall grew from 5'8" to 6'5", 9 inches in roughly 12 months. That's not a growth spurt, that's a biological transformation that fundamentally altered everything about how his body moved through space. The growing pains were excruciating, deep, aching bone pain that wakes you at night. His joints constantly adjusted to leverage angles they'd never experienced. Most teenage athletes would take time off, let the body settle, allow coordination to catch up. Tom trained through it all. Not stupidly, he wasn't ignoring injury signals. But he refused to let temporary discomfort derail the trajectory he'd been building since age 7. And somehow, impossibly, he kept winning. The awkwardness that should have set him back barely registered in competition results. If anything, he was getting better, finding new advantages in his increased reach and leverage. But this transformation created an unexpected crisis that nearly ended his fighting career. He couldn't find opponents. Regional MMA in Britain was already small. Heavyweight prospects were practically mythical creatures. Most athletic kids that size were being funneled into rugby or football. Promoters couldn't match a teenager against veterans, but Tom had already demolished everyone his age and size. He spent months training for fights that fell through. Full training camps, 8 to 12 weeks of intense preparation, only to have fights canceled with a week's notice. The psychological toll was devastating in ways that don't show up in fight records. Many talented fighters quit at this exact stage, not because they can't compete, but because the opportunities simply aren't there. Tom could have been another statistic. Instead, at 18, he decided to take whatever fights he could get, regardless of opponent's experience or payday. June 13th, 2015, BAMA 21, Tom versus Stuart Austin. Austin was a crafty veteran who'd seen countless young prospects come and go. He'd watched Tom's fights, identified gaps, and had a plan. Second round, heel hook, Tom tapped. His first professional loss hit like a freight train. Not just the defeat, but the realization that being talented wasn't enough. That veterans with less raw ability could still beat you through experience and tactical preparation. Here's where Tom proved he was different. Instead of making excuses or blaming bad luck, he was genuinely fascinated. How had Austin set that up? What had Tom missed in his positioning? What tactical adjustments could prevent similar scenarios? That intellectual curiosity about failure would become one of his greatest strengths. But first, he had to endure another devastating setback. May 14, 2016, Bama 25, Tom versus Lucas Parabig. Everything was going according to plan. Tom was winning, controlling the action, proving the Austin loss was just a learning experience. Then, in a moment of frustration, he threw illegal downward elbows and got disqualified. His record, 3-2, 2 losses. The narrative shifted from promising prospect to guy who can't get over the hump. In regional MMA, this kind of record is a death sentence. Momentum is everything. Once you're perceived as someone who folds under pressure, opportunities evaporate. Promoters become hesitant. Better opponents avoid you. Tom was watching dozens of promising fighters burn out at this exact stage, transitioning to teaching full-time, leaving martial arts for regular careers, becoming that guy at the gym who could have made it if. During his Bama struggles, Tom dealt with realities fans never consider. Training camps cost money. Travel cost money. His personal training income was steady but modest. There was always the temptation to just focus on building that business. His father had already sacrificed his IT career. The academy was surviving but not thriving. The pressure to justify all the investment was overwhelming. This is when most prospects disappear, when the dream collides with economic reality and reality wins. But then Tom made a decision that seemed completely insane. He was going to try professional boxing. In 2017, Tom got licensed as a professional boxer. This wasn't desperation, it was calculated strategy. For years, Tom had been cross-training in pure boxing alongside his MMA work. His hands had always been sharp, but lately, something had changed. Sparring partners, legitimate boxers, not just MMA fighters, were having serious problems with his power and timing. Plus, the heavyweight boxing scene in Britain was experiencing a golden age. Anthony Joshua was becoming a massive star. Tyson Fury was the charismatic champion. There might be real money to be made. Getting licensed as a boxer when you're known as an MMA fighter required navigating political resistance. The boxing establishment viewed MMA with suspicion these cage fighters weren't real pugilists. Tom managed it anyway. His opponent was Thomas Badzat, a Hungarian professional with a 1-2-2-4-2 record. Not elite, but a legitimate professional who'd been doing this for years. The fight lasted 1 minute and 24 seconds. Tom dropped Badzat with a combination that would have looked at home in any world-level boxing match: proper footwork, perfect weight transfer, technical excellence. Then he finished with follow-up shots. Clean, technical, devastating. For a brief moment, Tom felt complete dominance, the kind that makes you feel invincible. But as adrenaline wore off, Tom realized something crucial. His heart wasn't in boxing. The politics, the promotional games, the difficulty getting meaningful fights without the right connections, it all felt fundamentally wrong compared to the pure competition he loved about MMA. More importantly, he had unfinished business. Those 2 Bama losses weren't just defeats, they were unanswered questions. Had he really reached his ceiling in MMA? Or had he just not figured out the right approach? After nearly 3 years away from mixed martial arts, Tom made a decision that would change everything. He was going back to MMA, but this time, he was doing it right. When Tom signed with Cage Warriors in 2019, he wasn't the same fighter who'd struggled in Bama. The boxing training had sharpened his striking to an entirely different level. It wasn't just good hands anymore, it was true technical excellence. His footwork had become economical and precise. His combination punching had developed genuine fluidity. The time working as a personal trainer had given him unexpected advantages. Understanding biomechanics from a coaching perspective had deepened his grasp of movement efficiency. The mental discipline required to stay motivated through years of relative obscurity had forged psychological resilience. And his father's continued sacrifice, and he's still running the academy for modest income, had given him deeper purpose. This wasn't just about personal glory, it was about validating his father's massive bet. His Cage Warriors debut against Sofiane Boukhicho at Cage Warriors 107, first round TKO. But it wasn't just the result, it was the manner. Tom looked like someone operating on an entirely different level. His second fight 3 months later, another first-round finish, even more emphatic. 2 fights, 2 devastating first-round stoppages. The British MMA community was buzzing. This wasn't just another prospect, this was someone who might actually compete at the highest level. Then Tom's phone rang. The UFC wanted him. After years of grinding through small shows, of questioning whether the dream would materialize, of watching less skilled fighters get opportunities, finally, the call had come. His debut was scheduled for UFC Fight Night London on March 21st, 2020. Perfect storybook scenario. Hometown crowd, big stage, everything aligning. Then COVID-19 shut down the entire world. The London card was canceled. Tom's debut was pushed back 4 months, relocated to Abu Dhabi. No crowd, no atmosphere, just a sterile environment that stripped away all fanfare. July 25th, 2020, UFC on ESPN 14. Tom versus Jay Collier. 45 seconds later, Collier was unconscious. Tom had dropped him with a beautiful combination and finished with ground strikes, earning Performance of the Night in his debut. But what separated Tom from every other UFC heavyweight wasn't his successful debut, it was what happened next. Most fighters take time to adjust to UFC-level competition. Tom didn't have a learning curve, he got faster. October 10th, 2020, Alain Baudot, a dangerous French heavyweight with genuine knockout power. Fight time, 1 minute 35 seconds, first round TKO. Another Performance of the Night bonus. Tom was supposed to be adjusting to the UFC's speed. Instead, he was setting the pace. February 20th, 2021, this fight was particularly special. Andrei Arlovski, former UFC heavyweight champion, a legitimate legend who'd shared the octagon with the greatest fighters in divisional history. Tom rocked Arlovski in the first round, nearly finishing him multiple times. But Arlovski, with all that veteran experience, survived. Most prospects would have panicked. Tom adjusted. Second round, he changed the entire game plan, took Arlovski down, transitioned to his back, and choked him unconscious with a textbook rear naked choke. In the post-fight interview, Tom's explanation was revealing. "I've not seen the second round much. I wanted to see it. My dad's one of the first black belts in the UK. I've been doing jiu-jitsu basically all my life. Most people just don't know about it. I keep it in my back pocket for when I need it." Nobody expected that. Heavyweight fighters who knock people out don't typically have elite-level jiu-jitsu. They certainly don't choke out former UFC champions. The MMA world was realizing something. Tom Aspinall wasn't just good at multiple things. He was genuinely elite level in every aspect of mixed martial arts. September 4th, 2021, Sergei Spivak, the tough Moldovan who'd given other contenders serious problems. Fight time, 2 minutes 30 seconds, first round TKO. Performance of the Night bonus number 3. Tom was now 4-0 inches the UFC, with 4 first-round finishes and 3 bonuses. The division's elite were paying attention, but many still viewed him as unproven against legitimate top 15 competition. March 19, 2022. Alexander Volkov, the 6'7" Russian giant who'd competed against the absolute best. Tom caught Volkov in a straight armbar 3 minutes and 45 seconds into the first round. Volkov, a veteran of 30 professional fights, tapped out to a submission he probably never saw developing. By early 2022, Tom's UFC record stood at 6-0 with 6 first-round finishes and 4 Performance of the Night bonuses. The numbers were becoming absurd. No heavyweight in modern UFC history had put together a run like this. The UFC brass took notice. Tom was ready for a main event against Curtis Blades, ranked number 4 in the world, a wrestler with devastating knockout power. UFC London, July 23rd, 2022. The O2 Arena, Tom's first UFC main event, fighting before his home crowd. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. British fans had been starved for a legitimate heavyweight contender. Tom looked like he could be the one. 15 seconds into the fight, Tom threw a low kick, stepped back to reset his stance, and his right knee completely gave out. He collapsed to the canvas, clutching his leg in obvious agony. The fight was over. The dream was over. The medical diagnosis was absolutely devastating. Torn MCL, damaged meniscus, significant ACL issues. These weren't minor injuries that would heal with rest. These were career-threatening problems requiring major surgery and extensive rehabilitation. For any athlete, these injuries are nightmares. For a heavyweight whose entire game relied on explosive movement and athletic ability that separated him from larger, slower competitors, this was potentially career-ending. But here's what nobody outside Tom's inner circle knew. He'd been fighting with knee problems for years. That catastrophic injury wasn't some freak accident. It was the culmination of issues he'd been managing in silence. Tom had been training on essentially one good leg for months, pushing through pain that would have forced most fighters to take time off, compensating for limitations he never mentioned publicly. Why didn't he address it sooner? Because that's not how regional fighters think. You don't turn down UFC opportunities because your knee hurts. You don't pull out of fights that could make your career. You fight through it, manage it, pray it holds together long enough to achieve your goals. Lying in that hospital bed, Tom faced the biggest decision of his life. The recovery timeline was brutal, at least a year out, possibly longer. In the heavyweight division, a year is an eternity. Fighters retire, new prospects emerge, the landscape changes completely. Tom was 29 years old, not exactly young for a heavyweight. The question haunting him, did he want this badly enough to essentially start over? To spend a year in painful rehabilitation? To rebuild his body from scratch? To gamble that his knee would ever be the same? Most fighters in this situation retire. The injuries are too severe, the comeback too uncertain, the time investment too massive. But champions aren't built during the fights. They're built during the moments when quitting would be easier than continuing. 364 days later, the world got its answer. July 22, 2023, UFC Fight Night in London. Tom versus Marcin Tybura, a durable Polish veteran ranked in the top 10. The crowd was nervous. You could feel the anxiety. Everyone remembered what happened last time Tom fought in London. Everyone was watching his movement, his footwork, waiting to see if that explosiveness had survived. 1 minute and 13 seconds into the first round, Tybura was unconscious. Tom had dropped him with a perfectly timed straight right hand and finished with precise ground strikes. But it wasn't just the result, it was how he looked doing it. Sharper, more precise. Somehow, impossibly, better than before the injury. The explosion of emotion from the British crowd was deafening. Tom had just pulled off one of the most impressive comeback performances in heavyweight history. In the post-fight interview, Tom said something prophetic. "That knee injury was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm coming for everything now, and nobody's stopping me." 3 months later, his phone rang. It was Dana White personally. November 2023, Jon Jones, the heavyweight champion, had torn his pectoral muscle during training. His title fight against Stipe Miocic at UFC 295 was off. Did Tom want to fight for an interim heavyweight championship in Madison Square Garden? Against Sergey Pavlovich, the Russian knockout machine who'd finished 6 consecutive opponents in the first round? Oh, and he'd have exactly 17 days to prepare. Most fighters would have laughed and hung up. Tom said yes before Dana finished explaining the details. But then the universe decided to test his commitment. Days into his rush camp, Tom injured his back during sparring. Not seriously enough for surgery, but badly enough that he could barely walk. For several days, moving was agony. For the second time in 18 months, Tom seriously considered pulling out of the biggest fight of his life. The reasonable decision would have been to withdraw, let his back heal, wait for another opportunity. Champions don't make reasonable decisions, they make champion decisions. Tom pushed through, got intensive treatment, and somehow made it to Fight Week in New York. November 11, 2023. Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in combat sports. Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich for the interim UFC Heavyweight Championship. The atmosphere was surreal. 17 days earlier, Tom had been in Manchester, living his regular life. Now, he was in the world's most famous arena, fighting for a UFC title against one of the most dangerous heavyweights on the planet. The first 30 seconds were absolute chaos. Both men loading up with power shots. Pavlovich's power was real. Tom absorbed significant shots that would have knocked out lesser fighters. Then Tom found his range. A right hand to the temple that visibly stunned Pavlovich. Another right hand that dropped him. Ground strikes that left no doubt. 1 minute and 9 seconds after the fight started, Tom Aspinall was the interim UFC heavyweight champion. He'd become the first English UFC heavyweight champion in the organization's history. But more importantly, he'd proven beyond any doubt that his skills weren't limited to mid-level competition. They worked against the absolute best, most dangerous heavyweights in the world. The post-fight scenes were incredible. Tom's corner going absolutely insane. His father Andy in the crowd, tears streaming down his face, watching 13 years of sacrifice pay off on the biggest stage. But being interim champion in late 2023 came with a unique and incredibly frustrating problem: Jon Jones. Jon Jones held the actual heavyweight title and was supposedly recovering to eventually unify the belts. The UFC kept assuring everyone that Jones versus Aspinall was inevitable, just a matter of time. Tom waited. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Every interview, every press conference, the same questions about when he'd get his shot at undisputed gold. What made it especially frustrating was watching Jon Jones fight Stipe Miocic in November 2024. The fight happened, Jones won, but the performance raised more questions than answers. Jones looked good, but the pace felt glacial compared to how Tom had been destroying opponents. More importantly, after the victory, Jones showed no interest in fighting Tom. Meanwhile, Tom was breaking records nobody wanted to hold. He became the longest reigning interim champion in UFC history, 570 days of holding interim gold while the division stayed frozen. But champions don't wait around feeling sorry for themselves. Champions defend their titles. July 27, 2024, UFC 304 inches Manchester. Tom defending his interim title against Curtis Blades, the same man who'd been in the cage when Tom's knee exploded 2 years earlier. The redemption narrative was perfect, and the Manchester crowd was absolutely electric. This time, there was no freak injury, no unlucky bounces, no complications, just Tom showing the world exactly what level he was operating on. 1 minute into the first round, Blades was unconscious. Tom had timed a perfect counterpunch as Blades came forward, dropped him with surgical precision, and finished with ground strikes. The crowd's roar could probably be heard across the city. The victory earned Tom another $100,000 performance of the night bonus and cemented his reputation as the most dangerous heavyweight not named Jon Jones. More significantly, it proved his mental toughness returning to the exact same situation that had produced his worst moment and dominating. Post-fight, Tom finally let his frustration show. "I'm the best heavyweight in the world. If Jon Jones thinks he's the best heavyweight, let's settle it. Simple as that." Reports were circulating that Jones had been offered $30 million for one fight to fight Tom and had turned it down. The kind of payday that sets up multiple generations, and Jones walked away from it. Jones's public reasoning was revealing. "What does beating Tom do for me? He's 7 years younger, 35 pounds bigger. He does nothing for my legacy." The MMA community was getting frustrated. Tom was clearly the future, destroying everyone put in front of him, setting records, collecting bonuses, doing everything a champion should do except holding the actual undisputed belt. Tom handled the political quagmire with remarkable class. No trash talk, no personal attacks, just a simple message. "I will retire Jon Jones without even fighting him. I'm willing to prove I'm the best." He's not. Then, in June 2025, at a press conference in Baku, Azerbaijan, Dana White casually dropped a bombshell. Jon Jones had officially retired from MMA. Just like that. No farewell tour, no final fight, no legacy-defining unification bout. The greatest light heavyweight of all time was walking away, leaving Tom as the undisputed champion. Tom found out at midnight UK time when his phone exploded with notifications. Imagine that moment, getting ready for bed, and suddenly every MMA journalist in the world is calling to tell you you're the heavyweight champion of the world. Not because you won the fight you'd been demanding for 18 months, because your opponent decided to retire rather than face you. Most fighters would have felt robbed. Tom was philosophical. "I would have rather fought for it. I would rather have taken the title from the champion." But by every meaningful metric, activity level, quality of opposition, finishing ability, willingness to fight anyone, Tom had been the real heavyweight champion for over a year. The belt was just finally catching up to reality. To understand why Tom Aspinall is something more, you need to look deeper than the knockouts. His striking isn't typical heavyweight power, it's surgical precision. When Pavlovich, one of the most terrifying knockout artists in divisional history, came at him, Tom didn't trade power. He used pure boxing fundamentals, millimeter head movement, footwork that kept him in punching range but out of danger, and counters at the perfect moment. Result, 69 seconds, new champion. But his grappling is even scarier. Heavyweights aren't supposed to submit legends. Tom choked out Arlovsky in the second round, a former champion with dozens of fights. He caught Volkov in a straight armbar, forcing the tap from a 6'7" giant who trained with Europe's best grapplers. The scariest part, it all works together. Strikes lead to takedowns. Submission threats open up striking. Even elite wrestlers like Blades can't find a weakness when Tom is healthy and prepared. Tom simply doesn't have glaring holes. He's truly elite everywhere. October 25, 2025, UFC 321 inches, Abu Dhabi. Tom versus Cyril Gane, the technical French striker many called the most dangerous challenge for the Brit. First round, both cautious, studying each other. Gane moving like always, light fluid. Tom waiting for his moment, 4 minutes 35 seconds on the clock. Then suddenly an accidental eye poke. Gane didn't mean it, just an awkward movement during an exchange. Tom grabs his face, sharp, immediate pain. The referee stops the fight. Doctors examine, can't continue. No contest, the fight didn't happen. Imagine, months of preparation, perfect shape, the crowd waiting for another masterpiece, and it ends through accident near the end of round 1. But Tom's reaction showed why he's a champion outside the cage too. Part of the game, I will heal in a week. Cyril's a class act, not his fault. We'll finish this later. I'm still champion, and I'm still the best heavyweight on the planet. No excuses, no drama, just accepting reality and focusing forward. The record speaks for itself. In the UFC, Tom has collected Performance of the Night bonuses at a staggering rate, with almost all of his victories coming by finish, most in devastating first-round fashion. His average fight time of approximately 2 minutes and 18 seconds remains the shortest in heavyweight history. One no contest doesn't change the truth when Tom Aspinall finishes fights. He destroys people faster than anyone. Tom Aspinall's story isn't about someone who never fell, it's about someone who gets up every time. In 2015, 2 losses in Bama when everyone doubted. In 2022, knee explodes in front of his home crowd, career in question. In 2025, an accidental eye poke ruins the most anticipated fight of the year. Most people would break. Tom got stronger each time. Remember the beginning, a 7-year-old boy on the living room floor, his father Andy showing him jiu-jitsu. The father who quit a stable IT career to open an academy for £2 per person. The kid who worked as a personal trainer by day and fought for gas money by night. The same kid who grew 9 inches in 1 year and couldn't find opponents. Every obstacle was a test. Every test he passed. Now Tom is the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion. At 32, he's destroying elite fighters at a speed the heavyweight division has never seen. Almost all wins in the first round. Shortest average fight time in heavyweight history, not because he's lucky, but because he's the best. What's next? The rematch with Gain finished what started. Maybe John Jones if the legend finds the courage. Maybe someone new rises. Doesn't matter. Because Tom Aspinall proved the most important thing. It doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is how hard you're willing to fight to get where you're going. From a living room in Atherton to the UFC championship belt. From losses and injuries to dominance, that's rewriting history. 2 minutes, 2 seconds, it's not just a statistic, it's a philosophy. Don't waste time. Come, finish, win. The heavyweight king wasn't born in a famous gym. He grew up on a living room floor where his father believed when nobody else did. And now the whole world believes. This is Tom Aspinall's story from nobody to unbeatable champion. If it inspired you, subscribe and hit that notification bell for more incredible fighter stories. What do you think about the no contest with Gain? When will we see the rematch? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. See you in the next one.